Hello, everybody, and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm so happy today to be with Dr. Samir Yamin. Dr. Samir, before we get started, we'd love to know where you're connecting from, whether you're joining us live or watching the recorded session. If you're joining live, you can put in the chat live. And if you're watching the recorded session, you can put the recorded session. You can always ask your questions and then we'll go over them a little bit later in the session. So, and with that, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Samir Yamin. Is that the right pronunciation, Dr.
Yes,
Samir?
yes. Samir is fine.
Dr. Samir Yamin is an award-winning entrepreneur and educator. He's a faculty and a course director at the Stockholm School of Entrepreneurship. He's the chairman of Mentorship, which provides executive education for individuals, teams, and corporates to develop sustainable innovation strategies. Dr. Yamin is also the recipient of the prestigious Triple E Award, which stands for Entrepreneurship Educator of the Year, and also he won the Community Vote Award in that session. Congratulations, Dr. Yamin.
Thank you very much, Nadia.
Yeah, today we are going to discuss healthcare tech and entrepreneurship. But before that, I'd love Dr. Yamin to introduce yourself in your own words to the audience.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm live from Stockholm, so that's where I live. I am currently home, so this is the late afternoon for us. It's 6 o'clock in the evening. And my main role is that I help scientists, researchers, PhDs, and postdocs at Karolinska Institute to dive into their research and their intellectual asset and try to help them to bring it closer to society, meaning that we don't plan to make sure that everything is commercial, but we make to have an impact and add value to society by bringing research outside the lab. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And today I'm very excited to talk about entrepreneurship in the healthcare tech space, something I'm really passionate about. For the folks out there, you know, healthcare is a different sector compared to other areas. And we'll tap into how is it different. So what comes to mind is the HIPAA, which is the protection of information for patients. And what else is different from your perspective, Dr. Samir, in that sector?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to entrepreneurship, we can cut corners, but not when we do it in healthcare. So one of the major difference is that in entrepreneurship, we do iteration and pivoting very quickly, because that's the whole idea, is that what things doesn't work, we need to actually try other things. In healthcare, unfortunately, it doesn't apply the same methodology. Definitely we can iterate, definitely we need to pivot, but we cannot cut corners. We cannot just exclude things that might become a big headache later on. So that's why it's really important when you do healthcare entrepreneurship is to make sure that you are abiding by all the rules. So understanding first the regulation before jumping into the unknown. So that's one of the biggest mistakes, that usually people tend to think about regulation and all those aspects very far away in their development stage. And that could be a really, really bad thing, because you will invest time and effort to build things, and then you will discover that you cannot implement them the same way when it is, for example, a direct-to-consumer product or something that is not health-related product. So there are many things that are developed in the research that don't require CE marking, for example, don't require any regulation, FDA approval. Those things are quite easy to challenge, but when it comes to things that they are much more complicated and these have a direct impact on the patient, we can't use innovation to a broader perspective. We have to be quite mindful about the regulation, the aspects, and we need to make sure that we contact the relevant sectors before actually going out with our innovation out. Yes.
Yeah, indeed, the regulation is a very distinct differentiator for healthcare tech. There's also the privacy and the security.
Yeah,
concerns.
we have GDPR. This is a big element coming from the European Union in the beginning, and that's actually, it provides security for the patient and also for the information that the hospital or the research lab could actually hold and use. So, but this is very simple. It's a regulation, and you need to understand how can we actually bend a little bit the rules. So there is no rule that cannot be bent, but to some extent we need to be developing in parallel with those rules. So this is super important, so we can't ignore. So one of the biggest challenges that we can see, that people usually don't take it serious in the beginning because they believe that we are super early stage. So we need to push more at understanding and bring in those meetings with the professional people that they oversee those regulation, and bring them to our innovation board as soon as possible, so we can actually diffuse any potential challenge that might come in the future.
So when you say bringing people on board, so I have a
Yeah.
lot of kids here, and you
Yes.
can tell. So when you say bringing people to early on, what type of are they besides the regulatory component? Do you also bring in people to help with the go-to-market strategy, because it's
Absolutely.
different from
Y-
business
yeah. Yes.
B2C?
Yeah. So what I mean by that, usually you can get consultants at least at early stage to try to actually give you a strategy how you could apply that in the future, because the consultant job will not be actually about the technology or the development stage, but at least they will highlight the no-nos, as we call them, that you should not actually go into that. Because one big challenge is that you put a lot of time and effort in developing a technology, but it takes time to bring to market. And if it imagine if this way to market is full of challenges. So as long as you develop in parallel, so my advice will be bring those regulators as close as possible to the development stage. Then you can put a strategy to avoid all those misunderstanding that will pile up during the way.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of getting those experts
Mhm.
insight early on, because whenever, especially for healthcare workers,
Yeah,
integration and adoption, if it's for a different sector, a 10x, it probably needs to be a 20x or more in order for them to embed it into their system that's already
yeah,
very.
absolutely. Yeah, the difference layer is that you are dealing with patient data. It's not regular data, it's patient data, and it's distributed to many different stakeholders. So it is more complicated than people might see, because every university hospital have their own system to store data, to communicate data. Every medical body or every company that is doing pharma, biotech, everyone use a different channel actually. So there are many stakeholders, and you need to compile them all at the early stage. Yes.
Yeah, you tapped into the fragmentation of the
Yes.
system as compared to
Yeah.
different sectors like pharma, hospitals, providers, and so on. I know in different here in the US at least, it's super siloed when it comes to different hospital systems, and they
Mhm.
have their own systems, their own tracking, and sometimes those systems don't talk to each other.
Same,
Um,
similar in Europe as well. So yeah, that's one of the biggest challenge, data, and how much you can actually fragment that data. Because the whole concept is, people will say, oh, we will only use that part of it. But the whole concept is that the system that is already available cannot deliver only that part. They either deliver everything or they deliver nothing. And that's a big challenge, because you have to implement a new system over an old system, which is going to be a different in another one. And here in Sweden, we have even a bigger challenge, is that the whole country is divided into different, let's say, imagine different rooms, and each room can decide exactly which system they will use in their county, which part of the county they are available. So they might get a bidding on a system that is way below someone else. And imagine the complexity that builds up on top of that.
yeah, I think it's the same here in the US. Um, Different hospitals have their own systems.
Mhm.
And then now the insurance companies and the CMS Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they see the value of integrating at the
Yes.
national level. And there is huge push for insurance companies to compile
Yep.
data, insurance
Yeah.
and patient data, and centralize it
Yeah.
with so that different parts of the country can
Yeah.
access that.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah.
that brings a bit the next challenge that we all face now: who owns the data? So that's the biggest dilemma that we need to solve, because
Mhm.
based on many regulation and rules, is that the ownership is for the patient themselves, and then you have to get that consent that it could be shared, and there is no patient that gonna come and sign 20,000 consent because it's 20 different data set. And also we have tried to challenge that by the patient being the center. So now, instead of the patient going from one center to another and give consent to every center, so the point of care becomes actually the patient itself. So that's really important. Then the patient, when they arrive to that clinic, it automatically give up that data and then
Mhm.
lock it the moment they leave out. So the whole concept is that it's really important that we include the patient in the journey as well, because in all our development we only see the patient as the golden goose, but we never believe that that golden goose should follow up in every step of the development. So we
Mhm.
develop outside and then we come and say, okay, these are your options. And that creates another layer of challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot when companies, when they go to B2B, to hospital systems,
Yeah.
they think that I'm going to target the decision maker and talk to them so
Mhm.
that to increase my chances of, making that sale or that contract and so on. But they sometimes miss like the people who make it happen on the
Mhm.
floor. And then when it comes to adoption, even though you have the market, but people don't end up using it, and it's a
Absolutely.
wasted opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest challenge, that now on top of that comes a layer of artificial intelligence, because now we
Yes,
are hit and every day we are reminded that we will use AI to solve that problem. But we all know that AI is actually trained on data sets.
consistent.
And
Yeah,
if those data sets are not correctly labeled,
yes.
it will never gonna produce something that we could use. So
Hmm.
this is super important. So we need to take a step back and go
Yes,
back to the drawing board and try to understand that the data is an essential part of the whole process.
it, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it is. And when it comes to one of my favorite subjects during my executive MBA was the advanced business analytics.
Mhm.
And I've led a lab where we do a lot of whole genome screening. And 80% of the work is in the making sure that what you're using is representative for the population you're
Absolutely.
targeting, for the problem you're solving. Data cleaning is a big component of
Yes.
analysis, and that's back end that people underestimate. You put garbage in, you're going to
Mhm.
get garbage out.
Absolutely.
And your point about is very valid about the potential of AI to increase the bias, the existing biases,
Mhm.
because it's trained on existing
Yeah.
information. And if
Yeah.
bias is there, it's going to get amplified.
Absolutely. That's the main reason that we need to decentralize the concept. So the more we aim at centralizing data sets, the more we're gonna have that increased bias. The moment where we decentralize and make sure that we have variables that could be, let's say, mined or trained on without the central part of every institution, then we can get a much cleaner picture, let's say, to be politically correct about the outcome. So we don't have to recycle the garbage, as we always call it. So
Yeah, yeah.
mm,
And we tapped into that a little bit, but my question to you, what are the areas that you think are most promising for growth in the innovation in healthcare space?
yeah, I think so now we see a trend, and everyone want to build an app, want to build digitalization. And I think so this will calm down now, because the whole concept is that we all see the challenges. AI existed long way back. Now it became conversational, so that's gonna solve one aspect of the problem. But I think so now the biggest and the most important aspect in technology development will go back to basic. So we will go and dig into personalized medicine, these type of things, because we have been quite on the surface, and we are trying to get an overview things. And we know that science is not about one element, it's a combination of several elements. So we need to go back and try to figure out, with the help of AI, how can we link the dots, because we know diseases are complex. It's not one gene, it's not one protein, it's not one aspect of everything. So it's a combination of things. So interdisciplinarity in that approach will
Yeah,
be extremely interesting, because we need to bring that
yeah.
physician, with the physicist, with the mathematician, with
Hmm.
the chemist, with the social scientist, to
Yeah,
try to find a way to overcome the bias that we put, that we look at it always from one angle, that
yeah.
this is okay, this gene is the one responsible. But we always know that when we knock off that gene, it doesn't always end up with the correct things that we want to see.
Hmm.
But RNA technology will definitely see a great boost because Corona has been one of the biggest challenges that we had, and we're gonna see a lot of development in that part. But I would say precision medicine will be the next big thing, and DNA will go back to the picture
Yeah,
because RNA is a byproduct. DNA still is the
yeah, it's
core.
the
So
source.
yes,
Yeah,
so we will dig back into how DNA could affect, and I'm pretty sure that AI will somehow point out to things that we were not able to actually see earlier because our brain cannot process that amount of
yeah.
data all the time. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, you put you nailed it in terms of the integrative approach
Mhm.
to finding solutions. One example that comes to mind, it's there was a large healthcare system in Pennsylvania. I used to live there, and
Mhm.
they had like multi generations in the area with not as much movement in and out of the area. So
Mhm.
in the 90s, what they did, they were biobanking
Mhm.
samples, blood
Yeah.
samples, tissues from surgeries, and so on. They also had extensive data, like phenotypic data on these patients.
Yeah.
And they had the collaboration with Regeneron Pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
in the mid 2015 or 16 to sequence those patients. They sequenced, I think, to date over a quarter of a million people. And they
Interesting.
found so many druggable targets that they would have missed because they had the access to the phenotypic data, to
Mhm.
historical data, and multi-generational. So they were able to map
Yeah.
genes for complex diseases. So that's a prime example where you can merge genomics and healthcare data
Yeah.
to amplify the impact. Another one, and I've been an epigenetic specialist for a while, is going back to the source, as you mentioned, in terms of the epigenetics. And
Mhm.
we did one example that we published in the Lancet Respiratory Medicine,
Mhm.
is using accessible samples from the nose to predict which kids will have asthma in the future with over 90% accuracy. We were able to get markers, like 30 markers, and 28 of them
Yeah.
replicated. So there is value to these whole genome approaches to
Absolutely.
to get in actionable stuff that the patient can use.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, it's multi-omics. So the problem is that we can't see it from one perspective only. So genomics is the core, but we have to also add the Lego pieces on top of each other, so we can have a clearer view of the whole complex system. And
Mhm.
that's where I'm putting so much hope on AI to actually be able to see it from the five-dimensional view. Let's say it that we cannot
Exactly.
actually see.
Yeah, yesterday I think I came across a new, which I thought I was very excited about. It's called Drug GPT, where
Yeah,
they do advanced predictive for
yeah,
drug development.
yeah.
Another milestone project that I think will have a huge impact on drug development is there was a collaboration in Europe to,
Hmm?
to do all the proteins, to type all the proteins in the
Yeah,
genome, 99.99% using
yeah.
AI. And
Yes.
that was done, I think, completed in early 2022. So
Okay.
there is available resources if people can,
Yeah,
collaborate to maximize the impact.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And where do you see, so besides like going back to DNA, I think circulating DNA will have a huge impact too,
Yes.
in terms
Yes.
of early detection of
Yes.
cancers,
Yes.
personalized medicine through CAR T cell therapies.
Yes.
Another one that is going to be big in the future is the CRISPR-Cas targeted genome editing.
Yes. And
Last,
they have already developed technologies that they are even more powerful than that. Yes.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
last year it was the first monogenic sickle cell that they
Yeah.
showed that they can correct genetic variations to
Mhm.
cure
Yeah.
patients. So I think we'll see more of that too as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in terms of what's your take on, we tapped into that a little bit by getting people involved early on. How do you overcome like the regulatory hurdles if you are a startup in the healthcare tech space?
Yeah.
What are actionable tips that you can share with?
Yeah. So when it comes to regulation, things are regulated first on university research lab, then it goes one layer on the governmental body, and then it goes layer on the complicated EUC. So the whole concept is that you need to be aware of those things before you start. So one of the biggest challenges we see, people usually start and then say, we worry about that later. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And second, you need to use the resources that you have already at your university. So there is a lot of research happening at the university that have already been into that and is documented and well available for others to come and see the learning outcome. And then contacting your, I think so in Sweden, we don't have a transfer tech office because usually ownership comes to the researcher, but we still have innovation offices which also play a similar role, but they can provide you with early on consultant that can guide you to actually make sure that you don't go through those pitfalls. So, and second of all, you have to take the phone. Many times we have asked, we in the middle of teaching, call the FDA and ask.
Yeah.
Call that company and ask.
Yeah.
People need
And
to ask. So you can just expect Google is not the one that will answer you
yeah.
those questions. You need
And
to
here,
call
yeah.
them and
And
ask
here
them
in the US,
questions.
like there are program officers. They are available in
Yeah,
every single institute
yeah,
in the National Institute of Health, who they can give you expert advice on,
exactly.
what you need, to be aware of, so you're not too late to
Yeah,
prepare for that. Another one, if for the entrepreneurs out there that are not associated with higher education or research institutions, at least here in the US, there are government agencies, small business development
yeah,
programs. They have consultants free of charge or a very small fee
yeah.
that is affordable. So tap into those resources.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Ask. The whole point is ask. Try to find the right answer. And in Sweden is similar. The government is actually have this kind of officers that they must help you. It's not they
yeah,
should help you. They must help
hmm,
you because the role for them is actually not
that's
to
their
come and
job.
clean the
Yeah,
mess afterwards. So it's really important that you ask as early as possible because the mess will be much easier to be cleaned afterwards. And also universities quite a lot here in Sweden, they don't want to have any challenges when it comes to ethical, to regulation. So they push quite a lot on making sure that they are mostly every month running a seminar, a webinar about these type of topics. They also highlight key opinion leaders at the university that someone could come and ask a quick question. And also one thing that I think so is quite good is that when we started creating clusters of these startups sitting together within the university, that has helped quite a lot because information is much easier shared. And then you go knock the door of another startup that is doing something completely different and ask them, how did you solve that problem?
yeah,
And what was the best, or who's the best connection to do this, or should we do this before we do that? And then usually people share when someone knocks their door.
exactly. And don't be afraid to reach out to other
Yeah,
experts because
yeah,
people are willing to, share their advice with you.
yeah, yeah.
And so in terms of one other difference for the healthcare is the long cycle of
Hmm.
development. So
Yeah.
how do you advise, um, let's say it's a startup that or the idea that started at the university, when would be a good time to evaluate whether this is still, in research or this has potential to become a startup and grow?
Yeah. So this is a very challenging question, especially when regulations are different. At our universities in Sweden, you have the ownership of the idea. So universities and government don't take any shares of that. So that's good and bad at the same time, because it's good that, of course, the innovator possess 100% and they can do whatever they want, which most of the time they end up publishing, and they do it wrongly because the whole concept is that for them the impact is through publication. And then when they ask for help, most of the time they come very late. So this is super important to keep in mind that you need to act as soon as possible and try to put some safeguards. So we have a lot of things. You can do a pre-application for a patent. We all know that no technology that goes from a university that needs so many complicated things will take less than 5 years. So the process is already too long. But the whole point, if you started correctly, you have the freedom to operate in a way better than when you started wrongly. Because the whole point is that once you have applied for a patent, you have 1 year to test your idea. And then you can get consultant, or you can get, let's say, business developers with you. They can help you answer any question when it comes to marketing, to scalability, to potential. You can go do market research, you can have the voice of your customer, you can do all those things and make sure that, okay, this is something that could be brought into a company. So, and then you can do that while keeping your research and your publication in parallel. But the whole concept is that the timing is really, really essential. So you cannot come too late and you cannot come too early. So that's why being informed and joining courses, that's why we put a lot of emphasis on trying to build educational material, to try to bring even postdocs, PhDs, and professors, to explain them that usually the innovation takes time, but if it's done correctly, it's way much easier and fun to work with rather than later on clean up the mess. So we put a lot of emphasis on pushing our researchers to go talk to customers. They are not used to that. They have no understanding of who the customer is, because
Yeah,
in their mind is that, okay, I develop things for society, they should be glad, it's a magic
yeah,
pill that can do magic, but they don't understand the life cycle of the whole process.
the business
So,
side. Yeah.
yes, so this is super important. So
Hmm.
education plays a huge role in that aspect.
It
Once
does.
you start introducing them to the process, that's why we have one of the, it's called the process design. At
Hmm.
least the check, you make them a checklist, and they love to go through checklists. Did you do this? Yes. Do you do this? And then it becomes much easier to evaluate if that idea is viable, is that idea should go outside the lab, or it can be one advantage as well. Since I mentioned later the
Hmm.
clusters is in the university, so the idea will not just go away, it will just move to another building, and
Yeah,
then the professor or the researcher will keep doing whatever they love to do, and it can develop next to them, and they can be on the scientific board, or they can be advisors if they don't want to go through the entrepreneurship, let's say, cycle, or they can do in parallel, which mostly what people do here.
I see. So, what's the most common situation? Is it the academics being involved as on the science part or the technical side, or how many of them, or percentage-wise, move into being more involved on the entrepreneurial side?
Very few actually jump ship. Most of them, they have two legs. One leg in entrepreneurship, one leg in research. It's very difficult for a researcher to actually go out of research. At the same time, we need to train them really well, because business is not a trip that similarly they are aware of. So most of the time, they are running things in parallel, to the point where we can convince them that to leave the leadership in the company to someone that knows how to run the business, and they could stay as a product development, or the expert that knows the technology, or the one that developed the scientific part of it. So we try to make sure that they understand that you need to scale, you need to access the market, you need to do things that you are not actually familiar with, and most
Yeah,
people don't like that. So
yeah,
that's one of the aspects. Yes.
yeah. A founder does not mean that you are the CEO. Sometimes
Yeah.
you have to give that role so you can focus on what's called zone of genius. It could be the
Yeah.
technical side. It could be the the commercial side. If you're not business trained,
Yeah.
perhaps, or if you don't have the leadership skills or the
Yeah.
time, if you're involved in two things at a time, maybe it's how difficult is it for um, in that type of situations for them to give up that
It's
leadership
quite
role.
difficult. It's a struggle. We have seen many times great ideas just get burned out because of the main investigator who will not let go. They believe that they can run the company the same way they run the lab, and that's horrible. And it's a real challenge, because the whole point is that they have spent maybe 20 years researching about that, and they will not gonna accept easy that, okay, their baby will be raised by someone else. So
Yeah,
that's why we try to compromise on the aspect, is that, okay, you can stay as a founder, you can do all the most important thing, but let the business part, at least the business concept part, be
yeah,
run by a professional.
by a professional. Yeah,
Yeah.
one in helping tech companies, especially from universities, move to the market. One other challenge that I saw is that sometimes the business opportunity is not in the exact same sector that you do your research on. You may have
Yeah.
a technology for cancer, for a specific type of cancer, but it could be more profitable or help more people
Yeah,
if it's in a different vertical. And that
yeah,
I found it's a little hard to kind of remove those blinders to see the
yeah.
opportunities.
One way to overcome this is that to make sure that the team is interdisciplinary. So the whole point is that we always push innovators at least to make sure that they have someone outside their scope within the team. Because most of the time they come two doctors or two researchers from the same lab, they have the same training, they have the same mindset, they have the same way of doing things, and they want to go and build something. And then we push them to actually, this is okay, but bring someone that will disagree with everything that you say, because you need a different perspective. Bring an engineer, because the way that you are imagining things, maybe an engineer will not ever find a way to actually apply it. Because it's really important now that we involve doctors to develop AI, let's say AI mechanism, and a lot of algorithm behind it. But the medical doctor doesn't get to the programmer concept. They can lay down the foundation, they can at least discuss how they wish and do, but they cannot actually understand the real code behind it. And you get three doctors that they want to build the AI algorithm, and then okay, this is really good, maybe you can do it because you have research or learned these things, but bring the professional that can actually
Do
impact
the
and
work.
make sure that it will actually deliver. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's so rare to find people that both have both the clinical and the understanding of how they, not programming itself, but at least the framework and what to
Yeah.
ask and what
Yeah.
questions to ask.
Yeah.
They're called unicorns because they're so rare. So,
Yes.
yeah, in terms of, we've tapped into this a little bit of having a team that is complementary to your skill set. What are other partnerships that startups in the healthcare tech space or strategies they can do to get into early market with healthcare systems or other partners?
Yeah, what I usually advise, at least companies that I work with or the researchers that I teach, is that go and get an elderly person to your team. We say that we have a really big challenge is that we have a lot of people that have already went into industry, they spent 20 years there, now they are retired, they become pensioners, they are sitting home doing nothing, still healthy and workable. Get someone from them to your team. That's a treasure. So this is super important. It's not about the mindset, it's about that person have been there, have seen it, understand all the challenges that you have. Get them in your board. I'm not asking you to hire them or get them into your team and make them work, but get them to your board and listen.
As advisors?
Listen,
Yeah,
listen what they tell you, because the whole point is they have been there for 20 years. They know all the tricks that happens in industry. And also, don't be afraid to talk to industry. Not every industry want to scoop your idea. Not every industry interested in you, because it's a huge cost for them to actually do things. If they see that you are doing something really good, they might be the one funding you to actually continue. So this is
yeah,
super important. Communication is really important. You don't have to reveal everything that you do, but you can also go and ask for industry help, because they have already been there and they have the capacity and the capability and the money to actually drive things forward.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think you put your hand on a very important point that comes over and over. Is if I share my idea, would somebody take it up? It's not about the ideas. Ideas are worthless. It's
yeah,
about the execution.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so put your idea out there. If you have IP or, don't share that part. But there are ways that you can still share and
yeah,
get feedback to move forward. And the other thing you mentioned, like tap into people that have the experience. Um, a couple months ago, I went to a Future of Venture Capital conference here in the Midwest.
mhm,
And one thing in a discussion panel that stood out to me is that not many entrepreneurs think about the external team that can facilitate things to happen. They're not like part of your core team, but you need those like advisors. It could be the regulatory advisor. It could be the insurance agent, the law component of the
yeah,
structure, so you can set the foundation right. So you don't
absolutely.
have to redo, and that will facilitate even when you get to fundraising. If
Yeah,
they see that you're set up right, that you have the right advisors on your, if need be, that shows that you did your own due diligence on your
Yeah,
startup.
absolutely. And when you have the right people on your advisory board, you are exposed to their network, and that's the
Yep.
biggest value that people should understand. So that's the main
Mhm.
reason when we tell them, "No, when you make a company, in the company that at least the regulation here in Sweden, you need to have at least one board member." And most people they put their best friend or their wife or their girlfriend. And we said, what value does they bring to you?
Yeah. What network
So
do
the
they
whole point
open?
is exactly. So the whole
Hmm.
point is don't be afraid to put someone that you might believe they might be your competitor. First, you lock them. The moment that they are on your board, they are already locked, so they cannot anymore distribute your concept to anyone else. And second, they expose you to their network. And this is the most important thing because that network is rich with investors, is rich with regulatory people, is rich with people that have been there already, and they could bring a lot of value to you. And second, we have been working actually with funding agency. Now that we are adding more and more, trying to push more to describe the teams, because we see great value, and we see when we see someone that didn't actually have a, let's say, working on a high tech med tech company, and they don't have an advisory board, and then we
Yeah.
directly reject that because there
Hmm.
is no way that you will make it without an advisory board. Who gonna come and tell you that, oh, you are going the wrong way, you are doing
Yeah.
something that will not work? So you need someone to comes and to tell you the bitter truth, and
Yeah.
then you need to accept that. And most of the time researchers have really hard time getting outsiders
Yeah.
because they were trained and built on the concept of a research lab. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of take and give. So you need to somehow find a way. Some of them they are really open, and some of them they are really close. So you try to
Yeah.
work it out or to bring them at least both to the middle side.
So you've tapped into. I'm going to build on the one
Mhm.
point you showed here is the mindset. So in your experience, from the entrepreneurs that come from the academic setting, who are the one? What are criteria do you see on either the personal or the mindset side that makes some more successful than others?
Yeah. Well, I think so. Researchers in general, they all look very similar till the moment where you pick up the ones that they dare to take risk. Because the whole point is that entrepreneurship is not something magical. Of course, I'm one of the people that believe you are born an entrepreneur, and you can definitely learn to be an entrepreneur, but it's much easier when you are born with those settings in your DNA that will help you do things different. When we talk about risk taking, we don't imagine a researcher jumping from the top of the building and build an airplane as people believe. But the whole point is that failure, the moment when you allow failure to enter your mindset, that's the biggest risk that you can take as a researcher, because researchers they are trained all their life never to fail or never talk about failure. So this is something really important, and that's why I teach about what are the 3F in failure in entrepreneurship. Is failure, fear, and
What was the first one? Failure, and
yeah,
what was the second?
yes. So you have frustration, failure, and fear. So
And fear.
those are the most important F's in entrepreneurship. You
Yeah.
need to experience them. You have to learn them. You have to
Hmm.
adapt to them. And when you see a researchers that will not allow themselves to fail, that's gonna be a
Yeah.
hard core to work with,
Yeah.
because entrepreneurship is all about failures, standing up, walking again, and try it. So
Yeah.
the whole point is when this mindset is actually so rigid that we are not allowed to fail, especially
Yeah.
when you work with medical doctors, they believe that failure in entrepreneurship is similar as failing about killing someone or doing
Yeah.
a decision. So this is super important, and that's extremely important to tackle that as early as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true because in most cases, especially for like advanced degree professionals, whether it's medical or research, what gets rewarded gets done.
Yeah.
And in most of their academic career or educational career, it's like the successes. The success getting A's or getting a grant or getting a paper,
Yes.
depends on what is
Pre-programmed.
granted.
Everything has to
Exactly.
be perfect. So if it's not perfect, that's the main reason we see most challenging entrepreneurs that comes from academia is that they spend 2 3 years developing a product that no one wants,
Yeah, put it in the
because
hands
they
of your.
perfectionists, they want to make sure that it's perfect in every
Yeah,
sense before they can dare to
they
talk to
can put
someone
it
else
out,
about it.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the codes that stood out to me is that if you are not embarrassed by your first MVP, you're too late.
Yeah,
You should be embarrassed of your first version of whatever product
yeah,
you're developing. It does not have to be perfect.
yeah. I have a story so happening
Hmm.
as well.
I love stories.
I have seen medical doctors in my courses that they have never prototyped in their life. They were super happy that they get confetti and all these kind of things that they could build and glue together. And those are medical doctors that they are. Some of them are surgeons. Some of them they are really, really high core people. And they said that we never get the chance to actually do that. And I said, you don't recall it during your childhood? That's something that is really important. You need to dare to build things. And then they get super amazed because they went, because one of the exercise that usually I use specifically before starting teaching is actually building the marshmallow tower. So that's I know if you are familiar with that, you have 10
I
tapes.
know the
Yes,
spaghetti and marshmallows.
yes. So this
Yeah,
is super important. And medical doctors are the funniest to work with, especially, and every time the winner team will be the surgical one because they will go around things, they will cut the tapes differently. They have a really good attention to their hand. They do things really well.
yeah,
But the whole point is it takes time to reach that.
yeah.
It's
I
really
remember.
important that you need to build the first things before, or no, it have to be the end product that we can test.
Yeah, I recall once I took my daughter to an engineering day at the University of Pittsburgh, and they had us in groups while they had people talking to them to motivate them. And they gave us the spaghetti thing to build a tower. And then at the end, they showed the results that the ones that had the highest towers, it was kindergarten kids.
Yes,
Even
yes,
better than the second one was architects, thank goodness they can build. And the worst ones were business trained people.
yes,
Executives, they did bad, except when they have an executive assistant to keep them on track. And
yes,
that increased their building ability by 30%.
yeah.
So kudos to the executive assistants out there keeping
Yeah,
executives in
but
check.
also that's an exercise really good because people, when they are executive, they want to win. They are programmed. We need to win.
Hmm.
So the focus for them to get so high, and we know that when you focus on the high, you will break it. And the kids,
Yeah,
they don't. They
because
are
they
not
pivot
afraid
and
of failure.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. They're not afraid of failure,
Yeah.
and nobody within the kindergartners is after being, the CEO of the Spaghetti Inc.
Yes.
And therefore, they don't care. They just build it. They go right into it and
Yeah.
iterate more than any other group. And that's the
Exactly.
startup mentality. You do not need to have
Yeah.
it perfect to start. It's more about how many
Yeah.
repetitions, how many iterations
Yeah.
you do have. And teams is very, very important to the point that many accelerators across the globe, they will prioritize the what's called the team market fit
Yeah.
instead of the product market fit.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about, the holy grail is getting the product market fit. It's
No.
about the teams.
Yes.
Yeah.
uh, when you have a coherent team, they can build any product. But you can have a great product and no one to build it because they're gonna be fighting. They're gonna be everyone. So the most important role in a company, I always say, is the product development guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there is no product to sell, no one will sell, no one will raise money, no one will do anything. So the
Yeah.
whole point is you cannot have a person that does all the things, and that's one of
Yeah.
the mistakes. They want to be the CEO and they want to be the product development guy, and at the same time do everything else. It
Yeah.
does not work.
Hmm. You
So
need
the
a
one that,
salesperson, somebody who has that sales, because the lifeblood of any company. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to raise money and so on. But in reality is you need revenue in order
yeah,
to be a sustainable
absolutely,
business.
absolutely,
And in the number one before like besides like the leadership that many technical founders lack is the sales component,
hmm? Hmm? Yeah,
because it's all about sales. You're selling your idea if you're pitching, you're selling your idea if you're recruiting, you're selling your product or service once
yeah,
you have an MVP to test. So sales is critical. So if you're not
absolutely,
good at it, get trained on that, and as soon as you can afford it, bring somebody who's good at that to
yeah,
complement so you
yeah.
can focus on the product or what have you.
That's why we put a lot of emphasis on pitching, because the whole point is if you cannot pitch your concept, you cannot do anything else. Because people, when they don't communicate things and the others don't understand, no one was willing to pay for anything. Neither the investor would risk their money unless you have a crazy idea and they believe that, okay, they're gonna put a lot of money and put a management team and you will become the slave of that idea, or they need to understand really what is the value that you are bringing to that team and if that product will ever go to market.
Exactly. Tapping into like pitching. What are I'm a big proponent of storytelling that,
Mhm.
there are certain points that people need to tap into depending on your audience. But what would you advise somebody who's in healthcare tech in
Yeah,
terms of
for
what
me,
to
I have
cover?
a very classical method that I'm in love with, and I include it as early as that's the seed for every company that I work with or every teaching. It's called the NABC model, because I still strongly believe that this is the easiest and the most efficient model that you could use
What does the
to build.
NABC stand for?
Yes, it stands for need,
Mhm.
approach, benefits, and competition. Those are the four elements that every idea need to have them crystal clear before going anywhere. If you don't identify a market need, there is no reason to build anything for. This is like reinventing the wheel. Then, if there is no benefit, why are you doing it? And if you don't know that there are competitors everywhere, it means that you didn't do your job correctly. So this is
Yeah.
very important. It sounds so simple, but in reality, is a nightmare. So this is
Mhm.
really important to understand that those are the four elements for every idea, because it's
Mhm.
really important. There is nothing. It's all about the benefit. And people usually, everyone that I have met and they have coached and everything, they get stuck on the approach. They come and talk about their solution the whole day, and I
Yeah.
tell people, everyone, no one cares.
And
Solution is,
where
yeah.
does the team fall into this?
Yeah, so the whole point is in the beginning they get, oh, this is not okay, but then when they start going more and more into the development stage of the idea, they start to think about it, and then they, oh, we wish we have heard earlier. And then when they start applying this kind of mentality, because this one will fit the business model afterwards, will fit the lean canvas, wherever concept it goes away, it's going to go around. You already answered the most important component,
The
because
full.
your value proposition is in the benefit. Your
Mhm.
competitor and how you're gonna reach everyone is in the
And
competition.
what makes you different from them?
Exactly. So the
Yeah.
whole point is you learn quite a lot by understanding that there are things that you cannot just eliminate. You cannot jump into a market without understanding the market need. You
Yeah.
cannot you cannot go and talk about your benefit if you don't identify who's your customer. And customer, I don't know why would I talk to them. Many people I have been smart as people going and their postdocs and everything. They have never talked to a customer, and
You
they are
need
more
to
into
talk to, yeah, I'm a big proponent of customer discovery.
yeah,
And one big misconception that I see over and over, people think it's a one time and done. No, it should be part integrated, embedded in your whole development cycle. Because
yeah,
if you do it right, those early customers that you talk to can become the people who would test it. They can
yeah,
become your ambassadors. They can be, spread the word about, word of mouth
absolutely.
for
And
your
most of them will
product.
be your first investor. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So yeah, that's yeah. My take. I like storytelling. I start with like what the big problem is, that it's growing problem,
mhm,
because if you're in business, you need to be profitable. It needs to have a return on
yeah,
investment, whether it's through your revenue or whether it's for investors.
yeah,
And the other thing that I saw a lot with technical founders is they get technical in their
yes,
pitch, and that's like a surefire way to lose interest from people.
absolutely.
So how do you advise them how to balance, being a subject matter expert, come across as your stuff, and yet make it accessible to the people you're talking to?
Yeah. So this is a big challenge, and I have tried many ways to overcome that. And one of the biggest thing is really good is that I send them to pitch in buses. So I ask them to take the public transportation, and whenever they are super stubborn and they want to talk about their fancy yancy things, I ask them, take your mobile phone, and you're gonna go pitch in a bus to a random stranger, and then take their feedback and come back to the classroom. So the whole point is that when they sit in the one thing that we need to understand is When they are sitting at university, that's their safe place. That's the only people that they have met every day. So they understand that all those around them, they understand what they're saying. But reality hits them when you send them outside the classroom. You put them on a bus, on a train, on any place where they cannot meet people that they are at the university. And
Yeah.
they try to communicate their idea and they come back and say, okay, now we know. Now we need to understand that no one cares about our concept.
No,
Everybody asks us what were the benefits. Why should I listen to
it's
you?
about them. It's not about you. Like
Yep.
when it comes, a lot of people think, oh, people are getting much shorter attention span and so on. But why do we watch Netflix for hours or
Yeah.
Prime, Prime Video? Because they use storytelling effectively.
Yes.
And those principles can be used in your pitch too, in
Mhm.
order to not only hook them onto your story and then keep them engaged.
Yes.
One of my early mentors, he would, similar to the bus story, he would say, ask yourself, would your grandma understand this? If the
Yes.
answer is no, simplify.
Yeah.
It could be in a word, it could be in your delivery, it could be, but simplify. And I call it the grandma test, or in
Yeah.
your case, the bus.
Yes.
And if once you get to that next stage, you will have a chance to be, technical when they do the due diligence and so on, and they bring in an expert. And there
Absolutely.
you can go into the technical details, but
Yes.
not early on.
Yeah, and that's the main reason why I push them to know your audience. So the whole point is that you have to believe that the audience will not gonna react to the same way. This is not your professor. That's not your classrooms that you are
Exactly.
teaching. So you need to tone down and make sure. And that's I push them quite a lot to discuss the least about the way how they're gonna solve the problem. So most of the conversation come and the story is about the problem identification and the benefit outcome of it, and
Yeah,
then leave the solution till the end because no one will care.
they
No one
don't.
carries an iPhone and care how many things are inside.
That's true.
Few, definitely few jigs, they are obsessed about Apple. We respect that. Well, some
Yeah,
people, they have hobbies, they can do that. But 99% of the population will just look at the outside and take it and go to TikTok. And those are the people that you want to have them as customers, not the 1% that will go and open the iPhone and look at the technology inside
yeah,
and be in love
yeah.
with it. So the whole concept, they need to understand the contrast.
They're customers. And
Yeah.
I always encourage also entrepreneurs to have different pitches. It's not one pitch
Mhm.
per segment. What you pitch for a technical person versus an elevator pitch versus
Mhm.
different kind of investors is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. That's why we call them the audience. So there are investors. This is collaboration. That's your customer. So each one will have a different way to elaborate about the benefits. Because for sure, for an investor, it's a return on investment. For a customer, what will be the benefit? Will they save them time? Will they get them happier? Will it bring their loved one back home? All these kind of things. And for a collaboration, what added value will be to that collaboration?
You know what's happening, right?
Yes, absolutely. I have kids as well, so that's
Okay, good,
usually
good.
they get into the right moments.
They know
And also
they are
you
smart.
can utilize your kids. Most of the at least the crowd I work with, most of them they have kids, and then I ask them, go ask your kids, especially when they struggle with the why method, the five whys. They always like have really hard time to ask five whys, and they say, perfect. Go to your 4 years old and tell them we're gonna go play outside, just like that, and then
Mhm.
follow up on the conversation. They're gonna come with 20 whys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, most of the best-selling books and stuff out there, like Harry Potter, you name it, they all have English at the seventh grade level, no more than the seventh grade level. So always aim at that grade
Yeah.
level in your communication, and you should be okay with the general public. We
Yeah.
have one comment here. Let's
Yes.
see some comments. I'm going to give some shout outs here. And so we have Dr. Harvey. He's very big on AI and
Mhm.
healthcare. So I don't know if you're, thanks for being here, Dr. Harvey. Uh, People should connect with him. He's very prolific
Yes.
in this area. This is more like a comment, one solution for self sovereignty of patients. So that's tapping into the medical data
Mhm.
addressed and tackled by Zibia.org platform. Uh, Also, Rachel, she's also very active on LinkedIn. Looking forward to
Yes.
the presentation. We have a nurse from Algeria. I'm from Algeria, so hello to all Algerians out there.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, and audience, if you have any questions or you need to touch base with Dr. Yamin, you can contact him on LinkedIn.
Yes,
If you have any questions about entrepreneurship, he's a go to person in terms of entrepreneurial education. And as I mentioned earlier, he not only won one, but two, or was it three?
yes,
Entrepreneur of the Year, Entrepreneur Educator of the Year in Europe.
yes, yes.
So, so
So this
and
this is this is a great opportunity to highlight that education is key. Many times they believe that things could be done out of the box. Yes, out of the box with some extra education. So don't be challenged that okay, most people that we work with they have been studying for a long period of time, and they will be like, oh, another time. No, you don't have to go textbook education. We are not teaching you entrepreneurship context. My style of have been successful because I teach entrepreneuring. You have to do things and learn from your mistake. If I give you a whole book, no one can replicate any business model. We all know that. I give you any business model that's available there. You need to learn by doing. So you need to put aside your ego a bit, accept that failure will come,
yeah,
take a couple of punches on the face, learn from them,
hmm
move forward, and things gonna be much easier. And
and
we
it's
have seen
part of
that.
the process.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
hmm that yeah, that is true. And being an academic myself for 10 plus
Yeah,
years,
I've
and
been there as well.
I can relate to all the points that you mentioned about
Mhm.
the high standard in terms of it has to be reproducible. And it comes from the rigorousness of
Yes,
research. You would
yes,
want your stuff to be replicated and so on before it gets published, especially if it's in healthcare
yeah,
or in medicine. The standard is even higher.
yes,
And I had to do a lot of adjustment, not unlearning, but
mhm,
mindset adjustment that it's okay. Put it in the hands of people who's going to use it. You
mhm.
get feedback, and even if you fail, it's part of the process. It's not a failure;
Absolutely.
it's a learning opportunity. So,
Yeah,
um, and with that, oh my goodness, this is the shortest hour I've had.
yes.
And
Time
yeah,
flies.
yeah, for the audience out there, I'm Dr. Nadia Boutawi, and what I do, I'm very passionate about helping women entrepreneurs in the healthcare and tech space. If you need help in that area to gain clarity, one of the main problems that I've experienced myself and I saw for other women in the healthcare space is the lack of clarity,
Mhm.
lack of continuous support, not through
Yeah,
an accelerator or an incubator, but more like longer term support, and also the training,
yeah,
the educational part. Many people are SMEs, subject matter experts in their field of technology, but they lack that bridge
yeah,
between to move into entrepreneurship. So that's my goal for
yeah,
empowering women to solve problems. I
yes.
think having 2% of funding for women it's unacceptable.
Absolutely not.
It is missed opportunity for investors, and we can do better than that.
Yeah,
So if you,
absolutely. And I don't know if I'm super lucky or things go really better than many other countries, but over 70% of my classroom is females.
that's
So
awesome.
this is super important. We should start seeing a shift, and most of the time, one extra things that I do, and I'm well known about that they can bring their kids with them to school, to the classroom.
That is awesome. Yeah,
I
that
think so. That's
reminds
one
me
of the
of
biggest challenge that actually people usually find it. I cannot teach when there is a kid crying. I don't care. I
yeah,
have brought my kid many times to because I have to teach and I have a kid. What can I do? So I have created this type of mindset that bring your kid. I am happy. I have many pictures. If you can see, I'm holding the kids of the participants so they can take notes and they can part of. This is natural, and I think so. That's where equality plays a big role. You
that's
shouldn't find you shouldn't find an excuse not to come to the classroom.
yeah.
So,
I recall when I did my executive MBA, and I had to travel for 4 hours for the weekends for
mm,
the classes, and I had to arrange for kids who's going to look after my kids while I'm in class. Travel with 2 to 3 kids with me,
yeah,
and the cost it tripled the cost of
absolutely.
me
And
of
you can't focus if
pursuing
you
my
have to.
education.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
so
this is super important. Yes.
so I applaud you for
Mm,
being inclusive and to encourage women to pursue their entrepreneurial education. So for the audience here, if you have any, you want to get in touch with Dr. Yamin, you can find him on LinkedIn, connect
Yes.
and follow him, and he's a superstar when it comes to entrepreneurial education. We have a couple comments here. Let's see if there are any
Yep.
questions. Yes,
And I'm more than happy to establish new collaboration, or so ping me. Just send a message and I'll get back to you.
that's awesome. And with that, that's all the time we have. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Dr. Yamin, for your
Thank
time.
you for the
I
opportunity.
appreciate the discussion, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks, everyone who's watching
Yes.
either live or on the recorded session. If you have
Yes.
questions while you watch on the recorded session, put them in the comment, and we can look back here, a day or two from now and answer them there. Thank you so
Perfect.
much for your time, and
Yes.
we'll see
Have a
you
nice
next
afternoon.
week. Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
Bye bye.